All right, welcome everyone. This is leveraging parent-run groups to support newcomers. And today I am here with my amazing colleague, Meghan Chapman. I think you might be expecting to see Ann Tang today, but she is unfortunately out sick. She has no voice, so we couldn't get her brilliance here today. But I will note that anything you hear today that is amazing and like life-changing for you, it probably came from Ann's head, not mine. Maybe from Meghan's. So all kudos to Ann who couldn't be here today. So again, if you could just take a moment to drop your name, your title, and your community in the chat, that helps us out to know who's here and will also help us with our activities later today. My name is Cambria Russell, and I'm a white woman and I'm middle-aged. I have shoulder-length brown wavy hair that's getting grayer and grayer by the day. And today I'm wearing a maroon colored shirt and a brown sweater. I'm the Senior Program Director at the Federation for Children with Special Needs. That means that I oversee most of our work around family engagement and health initiatives. And today I am joined by the amazing Meghan Chapman, who's going to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Meghan Chapman. I'm the Family Partnership Specialist at the Federation for Children with Special Needs. I work with Cambria and Ann closely to try to support family-led groups, CPACs and LPACs mostly, and we'll talk a little bit about them, and specifically trying to help them to be as equitable as possible. Just trying to find my microphone. There we go. I am also a middle-aged woman. My hair is a little bit longer than shoulder length, very straight, probably more gray than Cambria's, and also a white woman wearing glasses, blue glasses, and a colorful top.
All right. You can go to the next slide, please. All right, so this is what we are hoping to get done today. This is our agenda. We are going to briefly discuss the kind of landscape and ground some of our work in some basic ideas of belonging. We are going to dive deeply into co-design, which Meghan is going to share with us, and is really the heart of the work that she does with us at the Federation. And we'll also discuss cultural brokering as a co-design factor. And then we're going to start a planning for action process that starts in this webinar and will also be continued into the next webinar. So we're hoping that you'll all join us again, but if you can't, the videos are always available online. And then we'll end with a little reflection time. Okay, so if you've been joining us for a while, and I see a lot of familiar faces here, you may have heard Ann refer to this statistic before. But in thinking about the landscape of our schools and communities, it's important for us to recognize that in Massachusetts, about 1 in every 6 individual is born outside of the country. And so that is good information to contextualize the work we're doing. And I'd like to hear from the group how this statistic feels for you. Is this reflective of your community? Do you feel like it's changing as we have waves of newcomers? And how does this information inform your work? So I would love, people can just unmute and shout out. We're not a huge group, so I don't think we have to have any formality around that. So I'm wondering how this statistic lands for you, if it's reflective of your community, and how this information might inform your work. Y'all are testing my wait time. I used to be a teacher. I can wait you out. I see a couple folks took themselves off mute. I feel like you want to speak. I'm all ears.
As I see this graph, understanding the landscape, uh, a welcoming environment for newcomers. Um, I, I think about Brockton, and of course, Brockton is one of the largest um, community in Massachusetts with the highest number of people of color. And the study came out maybe a couple of years ago. So it means to me that regardless of how I may think about, families, that I need to look at the population. And also, I think I always talk about how important it is for me to just listen. Um, so it's about, stepping back and realize that it's not the same it used to be, and to adapt, adjust, and accept.
Adapt, adjust, and accept. I like that. So do others find this statistic that 1 in 6 folks in your community would be born outside of the US? Is that something that matches with your experience in your school community?
Hi, Nate. My name's Christina Muse. For those of us here today covering the Department of Youth Services throughout the state of Massachusetts, I would say that I cover Middlesex County and Lawrence. So I can say that in Lowell and Lawrence, the statistics definitely reflect the community, but I can say in many of the other towns, they do not. So what I would say, how does this affect my practice is well, working with all of the different districts, it's learning the people and understanding where their experience might come from when I work with the adults, but when I work with the families, it's just the knowledge that people don't necessarily know how our systems work, and our systems are not necessarily the way things should be. There are more than one way to do things, and to just try not to make any assumptions.
Those are great points. Does anybody else want to speak to how this impacts their practice or how this compares to their community? Then I'd ask that we all just kind of for your own thought, think about how this will impact the way we are working with PACs. So again, those are our CPACs, our LPACs. We're also talking about organizations like PTOs. And so how does this impact that landscape? Meghan, I see you're unmuted.
I think I saw Tatiana wanted to have had a comment too on that slide before we move over.
Thank you.
Sure. Oh, I'm sorry. Give me 1 second.
So while we wait for Tatiana to come back, I'll just say that something this makes me think of is if we already have this, wealth of amazing information from folks who were not born in the US, who maybe didn't go to school in the US, then they may be hiding out in our PACs and be this tremendous source of information and support for our newcomer families. So that's something that that occurs to me as I look at the slide. Again, these are slides that Anne created, so I'm responding to them at the same time that you are. So that was something I was thinking, is that slice of the pie we see here is a really amazing resource for us.
Sorry, Cambria, I'm back. I'm just on George's screen because we're sharing a space. So that's where there was an echo. So I'm just on his screen. So I would say that our population looks much different than that because we have such a high population with immigrant families that it would be much higher than that. And for us, we just really need to think about what is the population that we're serving when we're doing pretty much anything, family events, community events, outreach, the languages, how we're pushing out information, those kinds of things. That's all.
And can you remind us what district you're in, Tatiana?
Yes, I work for Lawrence Public Schools.
Yeah, I can imagine that if we were looking at pies for our different communities, they might look quite different. And I imagine Lawrence is got a larger kind of ivory colored, is that what that is? Piece of the pie. All right,
Yes.
great. So that's a bit of our landscape, and I want to kind of root us in family engagement, which is what all of our work at the Federation is based in. Basically, family engagement is full, equal, equitable partnerships among families, educators, and community partners to promote children's learning and development from birth through earliest stages into young adulthood. And if you are familiar with our strengthening partnerships framework that the state has adopted, you'll note that the definition there even goes to prenatal. So we're talking about family engagement from the very earliest times. So family engagement is about building relationships between students, families, educators, and the community. And today we want to talk about family engagement in terms of PACS. And I just want to note, because I have to put in my plug for family engagement everywhere I go, that research on family engagement shows us that when families are true partners in their child's education, and this actually goes for healthcare and other areas too, that two really wonderful things happen. First, the children do better in school. So we get better grades, better attendance, higher graduation rates. Um, Basically, a lot of those traditional success measures come from family engagement. And the other, and I think even more exciting outcome is that schools themselves do a better job of educating all children when families are involved. So that means when I'm involved in my child's high school, even if there's another family that cannot be involved because of their circumstances or whatever is happening, then my involvement's actually impacting their kids as well. And so I think that's a really important point to be made, that we're kind of the rising tide lifts all boats kind of idea, and family engagement holds true. Okay, go ahead, Megan, sorry. So those of you who've been coming to our seminars for a while are going to recognize this belonging diagram that Anne designed. And I'm gonna go through it step by step, not in a lot of detail because it's likely you've seen this before. And if you haven't, we have a lot of videos on our YouTube channel that you could go into take a deeper dive with it. And also our online learning hub has a lot of information about the belonging diagram. But as I'm talking this through, I would like you to keep in mind how this applies to working with PACS. So we've been talking about it, thinking about welcoming newcomer families, and now we want to add that extra bit of that other piece of this will be PACS. So keep that in mind as we're going through this. So at the top of the diagram, which this is a Venn diagram with 4 circles overlapping, at the top we have understanding context, which is denoted by a little light bulb. And that's where we started here, is understanding our context. So this is understanding all of the legal ramifications of families being newcomers. In terms of thinking of PACS, we're thinking about our legislation around CPACs and LPACs. And so understanding all of those pieces are important to getting to belonging. If you go clockwise down, you'll see that we're talking about basic needs. And so clearly that is a part of all of our work in welcoming newcomers. If you go a little bit further down at the very bottom in the blue circle, we have respecting language and culture, which is denoted by an icon of 2 people talking to one another. And then if we go around, we have a green circle that is partnering with communities. And each of these circles overlap and intersect with one another. And even though the Venn diagram has its peculiarities, that we can't necessarily see the overlap between understanding context and respecting language and culture, for example, they all overlap in different parts of our practice. And these are all 4 sections that we want to be thinking about in terms of welcoming newcomers. While we're looking at this, though, I'm curious if any of these pieces or the intersection of any of these pieces come to mind when we're thinking about working with PACS. And I'll leave that for you all to think about for a second and just unmute yourself and jump in. If there's a piece of this that naturally applies to working with PACs in your mind? Megan, are you pointing for them? Are you are you helping them out?
No, sorry, my cursor is being distracted.
I thought you were pointing out that they should use that as that section of the slide as an answer. So again, the question is, what part of this belonging diagram would intersect with the relationships with our PACs?
I'm sorry, so just to better understand the question, can you explain what PAC is or what it stands for?
Yes, thank you for asking. So today we're talking about our parent advisory councils. So that's CPACs, Special Education Parent Advisory Councils, the LPACs for English language learners. But thank you, Megan, for dropping that in the chat. So today we really, PACs are a great resource for us. And so we want to think about how we can utilize our PACs in order to build on our welcoming of newcomer families. So in context of this, this diagram, where do you see PACs falling? Or maybe someone wants to argue that you don't see it. And I'm happy to hear those comments too.
I'll say that I'm a fan of Anne, and when I saw this diagram, I was really drawn by it. And as you're talking, mentioning, that respecting language and culture, one of the things that I've seen too often when we have fact meeting, people are always amazed that a lot of people are there, and then they speak their languages. So that, I think it's a common theme, that they see someone who kind of look like them, because I truly believe representation matters. So it makes a difference where people are more at ease and more comfortable to speak, because when you speak your language, you don't have to worry about, am I saying it right or not, or worrying about your accent or how people may see you. So that idea of belonging, and I think that's what it is. When you belong, you don't worry. When you belong, you're at ease. When you belong, you're yourself and you can share your talents. And I think when we have those facts, it really helps others to see that we are we're all trying to do the best for our children. And that really creates some common ideas and goals that they have for their children.
Okay, I love this. So Soraya, I just want to make sure I understand. So it sounds like you're saying that in your experience, a PAC can be a space where we respect language and culture, and that's a space where it's already happening in some cases.
Yes, because but I see it's for other group, but in terms of the PAC, they come knowing that, I mean, we do have the support if someone doesn't speak the language, but like the person who are there don't really need to be there, because they also connect with one another. There's a connection, there's natural um, relationship, because they speak the same languages. And you can too often we have a group who speak Haitian Creole, a group who speak Caribbean Creole, a group who speak Caribbean or Portuguese or Spanish. So they already feel at ease. So they always feel that feeling of belonging, because they connect with someone. And that's where I feel that representation. But respecting language and culture, I think it's more in the school side, I think, or the community side, where they are the one who's giving the space for them to come. But in a PAC, it's easier for people to feel that they connect and they belong.
I'm really happy you've had that experience. That's nice to hear. I heard somebody else jumping in. Sabrina, was that you?
Yes, that was me. That was me. Hello, all. My name is Sabrina Perez, and I work for the Lawrence Public School District. And I have to say that a lot of the diagram on belonging really, really embodies what we do here in Lawrence. We have a really big and nice family engagement team at the school level, centralized level, LPAC, CPAC, and it's really nice to really see our families like we're the face, and that moment of showing them the respect, that greeting part is so essential. And once you present that greeting, and once you treat families with respect, everything else just falls into place and really embodies the work that we're doing. And I'm really proud to say that the work that we're doing with like LPAC specifically, our English language families, where that's the majority of the population that I find myself working with, being a Latino predominant community that we work with, and being a Latina myself. So it's really nice to say, not only am I a Latina as well, but the majority of our staff that work under the family engagement also speak the language. And if they don't speak the language, we are sure to find someone that can speak the language, whether it's a teacher, or we use different services to really try our best to communicate with families. So the belonging in all aspects really embodies what we do here in Lawrence.
I'm really happy to hear that. I love hearing the good stories. Y'all share them as much as you can, because we hear a lot of when things aren't going well. So I love it when people share the good stuff. All right, so I hear a lot of people are kind of resonating, especially with the language and culture piece of the diagram, especially in terms of PAC. So I'll be interested to see how that thought process kind of evolves as we talk more today. I'm going to hand it over to Meghan.
Thank you. So this is Meghan. Thank you, Cambria. I'm so glad that you and Anne invited me to talk about co-design today. And I'm pausing on this belonging slide again before we move into that, because I'm hearing that it's possible that not everybody's aware of LPACs and CPACs. So I just want to take one moment at high level, and I'm happy to talk to anybody anytime about this, but on a high level, I just want everyone to know and be on the same page that in Massachusetts, there are laws that require every school district to have a special education parent advisory council. And then for schools and or districts, again, the law is a little more specific, schools or districts that have 25% of their students who are in EL programs, or 100 students or more who have EL programs, who are in EL programs, English learner programs, they have to have an LPAC, which are basically organized groups run by volunteers. So other families who are either English, their kids are in the English learner programs or in special education services or have disability. And those volunteer parents organize other parents to do a lot of the work that you're doing in family engagement. So I want to stay on the slide for 1 second and offer that what they do, like Dr. Presume said, respecting language and culture, that's a really big piece of this, is giving families a place where they feel welcome, that they belong, that they feel that they can go to find other people who can help, who are like them, to help them navigate this system. Because as it was said at the beginning, not everybody understands, especially newcomer families, they don't understand the system. This is true even of folks who might have been here for a while or even grown up here, but maybe just had never been really engaged in the education system. If we swing into that clockwise motion and go into partner with communities, this is what the CPACs and the LPACs do. They are out there trying to connect with other organizations that serve the kids in their community. It might be the Boys and Girls Club, might be the YMCA, might be the rec department. There are all sorts of places. Even in church and houses of worship, they're there in the community. Going up to the pink circle, understanding context. So they are people who, through their own lived experiences and listening to the stories of other families, they understand that context in a way that can benefit you, because they can bring you consolidated information, consolidated data, and anecdotal data that can help you with your work. And then that yellow circle, accessing basic needs. When we are, because I come from the CPAC background, when CPAC leaders are on the phone or meeting face to face, and same with LPAC leaders. When you're meeting with families, you are meeting that whole person. You're meeting that whole family, just like any of you are. So they are also providing resources that can help these folks access their basic needs. So again, collaborating with these folks means that you can share resources. They become a better resource for the community. You have more access to the community as well in a different way, where you don't have to meet every single family. They can also be ambassadors for you. It increases their access to the system. It can be a beautiful thing. So that's what we're going to talk about today a little bit, but I'm excited to talk to you about co-design because this is sort of one of my passions. And I'm happy to share it with you all. Since I've been invited to a community of practice, I'm looking for the community piece of it and looking for the engagement from you all to actually be participating in this. And so right off the bat, there's a question. What comes to mind when you hear this word co-design? Just based on the name, maybe you've heard about it, maybe you've read about it, maybe you've been part of a co-design group. I would love to see some thoughts in the chat, and or please just unmic yourself and share as you will.
I know this is recorded, so it's going to be recorded or it's recorded, but don't want to leave that much space. So
Yeah.
if you have something to say, go before me because I'm going to be speaking. So I think Brockton has been really fortunate to contact and connect with Dr. Russell Cambria to do some work when it comes to co-design, which I believe that was introduced to. You know, sometimes you do the work, but there you don't know you cannot put a name onto it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're talking about belonging, and too often we want to refer to people's having a space, not to just say things, but they do feel valued.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you're thinking about co-design, it's not the school telling families, hey, that's what you want to do. Those are the expectations, or those are the standards, whatever you want to put it. But a family's voice,
Mm-hmm.
it's heard, valued, then they can see their ideas come to life. And I think too often we start the conversation, but there's no follow through. And this is one part that I need to really work on myself, because having that data, having families, too often we tend to take it for granted. And for them to say that you are welcome here, as the person was mentioning earlier, that climate of feeling welcome, that, you know, you get the smile and then you feel that, hey, you're home, you speak your language, is like, you become so natural for you to share your ideas. So co-design for me, it's really collaborating by listening again to families' voices, not what the school wants to give in, but also they are part of the development. Their voice is being heard and then followed through later on by the school, or together. If we're talking about the pack, they are the ones saying those are the things that we would like to do in the school. This is what I think about, you know, from a cultural night. And I think a lot of people want to talk about cultural night. Cultural night is not a night for me to just come and eat, but this is what it means for me. Cultural night, that you learn about my language, that you learn about the food that I eat, you learn about the struggles and the thing that I've been through, but not looking at only the struggle, have to have pity, but to looking at it, how this is why we're still standing.
Thank you. I appreciate. There's a lot there. I hear what I think I heard you say, that, you know, we're centering on the voices of the families. They're being seen, they're being heard, they're being listened to, and we're not just hearing the words, but we're acting. People who are making decisions are acting on those, sharing information, telling them taking action, and then sharing what actions were taken, so that people know that their voices were valued, that their ideas were heard, and they were actually incorporated. And I appreciate that cultural nights and back to school nights are an excellent small way, that, like, small ask, it's a small left but a big impact, to use co-design, because a lot of times people say, oh, but no one comes. And it's like, did you include families in the decision making and the design of this event? Because if you include families in the design of the event, they will now adopt it They will tell all their families and friends that they know who will also adopt it because it's something that their group actually pulled together. And you are more likely to have the activities and what's presented represent what the community is looking for. Because whatever you're presenting is probably a great idea because you guys are all connected to your communities. But when you have families involved as decision makers, then it changes. And that's what co-design really is. Thank you so much. I see in the chat, this is about coming about through partnership, using different folk, having different folks involved. Absolutely. Just like, yes, these are all pieces of this. The word co-design makes me think of cooperative creation of something. Absolutely. Co-design comes from, this is a strange, interesting history of the word, and I'm going to kind of explain it without getting too deep into it. But it comes from, it was originally called participatory design. And then it was called cooperative design. And now it is called co-design, short for cooperative design. But so when we talk about participatory, I created one little image that I think kind of explains it well. But first, co-design, highly participatory approach to designing solutions where community members are equal collaborators in the decision process here in this design process. I should say, I'm going to change their quote and change it to decision, but it's this decision making that's the issue. This is not a question of getting parent input. It is not feedback, and it is not consultation. It's decision, shared power. So if we look at this design off to the side here with the circles, surveys, you're asking for input, right? Really distant. People are anonymous. You don't even know who said what, but it's valuable on some level, but they're not decision makers. They're not even in the room with you. They're not even in the room with decision makers. A focus group, now you have actual people who are talking, but by the time that data is coded, presented, written, and brought back to the group, it's again, you can't go back and ask the people what they meant. You can't go back and get more context and what would, did you mean this? Would this be what you meant? And would this serve you better? You can't really go back and ask. So then you have advisory committees like PACs. PACs, you have built-in advisory committees in your district. They're great for consultation because an advisory committee is designed to select the PAC specifically. The law requires them to, the district is supposed to be consulting them whenever there's a policy, program, a procedure, a practice, a product, anything you're trying to create that's going to impact their students. So the EL students or the folks with the students with disabilities, you're supposed to be consulting them. You're supposed to be involving them and asking for their input. You don't have to act on anything they say. They're just giving advice. Right? Co-design is when everybody comes together and they're all equal. That means you sit down with the superintendent or whoever it is, but you're sitting with the superintendent and you're sitting with a parent and you're sitting with someone who just came to the country 5 days ago, maybe that's too soon, that's pretty too urgent, but in the last few months, and you're asking everybody, and you have the people who are delivering services, the people who are executing the administrative end of things. Think about the whole supply chain, and also maybe some other folks who are solving the same problem in your community. They're all at that table, and now suddenly we have new perspectives and a new depth of understanding of the problem. Because it can be really easy to say, I do this work every day. I'm sure I have all the solutions, but in fact, we're going to talk about why that. You have great ideas, but why there might be something else that makes the solutions when you involve families that will make the solutions more relevant, better adopted, and longer lasting. So go ahead. So who uses co-design? Government agencies are using co-design. In the city of New York, I have a whole flyer that they put out about how they use co-design. You can't see it, but about how they're using it. The state of Connecticut is using it. The United Kingdom is using it, especially in social services arenas. So where they're serving families, where they're serving youth, especially like our version of DCF. And then Australia and New South Wales, this is like how they run government now. So they're really trying to be far more participatory. And of course, community service groups like ours, we're also, for the last decade or so, been trying to incorporate this more and more into our own work. And as I said, this is really relevant for if you're working in policies, any programs, or trying to revise or amend a program, any practices, projects, products. And you won't use co-design for everything, right? If you just have to tweak something, you may not need to involve co-design. But when you think of something that you're about to change or create, and you think, is it possible that it would be different if I had family input from the beginning? That's a really powerful place to start. Instead of thinking, when will I show this to families and get feedback? Because I think we all know, especially in schools, that by the time you have gathered enough internal people to approve of something that you have created or designed or are considering, that by the time you're at the place where you could show it to families, you can't change it. Like at that point, you're just taking the feedback and saying, thanks so much for that feedback. I guess maybe I'll bring that to the next project, but it doesn't help with this project. And so by bringing people in at the beginning, you can create results, that products or policies that are going to be the most impactful they could be. So you can really create more meaningful engagement with your community and create those connections in the community that maybe you didn't have before, or deepen them. The solutions are going to be more innovative because it's going to be ideas you didn't have. You could do anything by yourself, but if you bring in other people, now you can create something all new. I like to give people a pause really quick. I don't know how many of you have these kinds of spoons at home, or these ones. Have you ever seen the ones with these large grips? Out of this design theory, this, of course, co-design comes out of actual product design. This was originally created for product design. And the folks at IDEO, which is the most famous of the original co-design groups, they went out and they were working with not KitchenAid, but another organization who creates kitchenware. And they went out into the homes. This is what they do. Anytime they do co-design, they go out to people's homes and they say, let me watch you use these tools. Just the ones you have in your house. How do you use them? Where do you store them? How do you clean them? What happens when you cook with them? And they found that elderly folks were dropping the regular spoons a lot, which meant they had to bend over a lot. That was a lot of caused them pain, even just to grip, because your grip you could lose your grip quite a bit when you get older. There were all sorts of issues. And they came back and they said, folks who are elderly are a very small part of our population, of our customer base. They could have just continued to design for the 90%, right? But what somebody convinced them to do, and what they did, was they built out an entire line of products, which has changed how all the products are made. Because they're designing for disability, right? They're designing for ability and disability. So they created this whole line with these bigger grip handles, and it created this enormous boom in sales, and it created this it changed actually the way that tools are designed now for kitchens. All that to say, wouldn't have happened unless they actually heard from fans, unless they actually went out there and talked to fans, the people who are actually using the services, right? And that's why you can find solutions that better meet the needs of your users. You'd have more participation once the solution is released, and that ultimately is how you improve outcomes, right? It's when you can reach more families and get whatever services you have into the right hands, the people. So using co-design, how does this increase belonging? So going back to those words we were talking about before, stacking those different levels of expertise, families have a lived expertise that you're witnessing in your work, but it's different to live it. It's one thing to visit it, it's another thing to live it. And when they're sitting at the table, they are bringing their lived experience, which needs to be respected as expertise. Just like you have expertise that no one else in the room can bring, community allies can also bring some interesting perspectives and resources. One of the most beautiful things about co-design is it can change your mindset from thinking anything I have to do here in this school, I have to do it, to how do I leverage families as partners? How can they help me how can they become ambassadors for us? How can I become ambassadors for what they're doing and what they need? How can community allies, it could be businesses, it could be organizations like I mentioned, the Boys and Girls Club, the YMCA. Who else is serving your population? Let's get connected with them. Let's become partners with them. Have them at the decision-making table, because they might say, oh, well, I could do that for you. And how much less work is that for you? And then again, increase your impact. Again, this is a method of equitably sharing power, co-design. And the most powerful thing about sharing power is that we have to acknowledge that the power imbalance exists. When we have families come to us and say, you're going to come to my place at a time at my business, at a location, at a time that is convenient for me to talk about things when I want to talk about them, exactly the topic that I want to talk about, you have a lot of power. And you can share your decision-making power. You can share your rules power, so that when you all come together, you create the rules of the group together, you determine the objectives of the group together. There's just a lot of power to share. And it's important for us to recognize, even when we are delivering services, that it puts us in a one-up position, whereas co-design says, please make us equal. So we're also so this is where we're shifting from involvement of taking input or feedback to partnership. There's that decision-making power right now. We're prioritizing those relationships between yourself and anybody else in this group, and also the other people in the group with each other. That is also powerful. It's really important for people in communities to say, oh, you know what? This is another group that's an ally to who can help us. If I'm a newcomer at the table, you know, I can say, oh my gosh, all these organizations are working to help us. And then I can share that with more people, which builds trust within the community toward all of your organizations, which I think we all know is very important. And building capacity together. When you do a project like this together, you are all learning, building a lingo of your own, building a language of your own, and you're all hearing the same needs the same way at the same time, which is very powerful over time for building trust, like any relationship, right? And when you build each other's capacity of like, oh, now we all know about these resources together, that we all can lean on the same information together. That means next time you have an idea or they have an idea, or you can contact each other more easily. But ultimately, co-design is a mindset. There's another part of that community of practice I'm going to be asking for participation. Nothing about us without us. I'm hoping everybody's heard of this before, but if you haven't, this really actually comes out of 1500s is when this phrase was first documented. So it comes from like an Eastern European war setting. You can Google it, doesn't matter. Modern times, it is a mantra of the disability rights movement. Nothing about us without us. Stop creating things, assuming you know what we need. Do it with us, not for us, with us. And it was actually coined in this modern times by a South African disability activist, Michael Messuda and Gordon Rowland. So I just want to credit them because they're not often credited with that. So just want to stop here. What does this phrase mean to you in your work? Hopefully this one's powerful. You can add things to the chat or just okay, well, this one, I think I summed up basically what I'm looking for with co-design around this. To actually represent people, you need them represented. I think I heard Dr. Preston mention that. You know, it's important. Representation matters, right? It isn't enough to just assume we know what people want. And asking them in a survey, like I said, it's good. Asking them after the fact, if it can't actually impact the end result, that's harder to use. So including them from the beginning in the design and the decision making is really powerful. The other important piece to the element to this mindset is this saying: those closest to the problem are closest to the solution. And so while you are all very close to the people who have the problem, you have a lot of insight that most people don't. So you are experts in so many ways because you are that bridge between the families and the administration, how to get things done. But there's still that lived experience that people who are actually living the problem have that could give you another perspective on the solution. This is from Glenn E. Martin, founder of Just Leadership USA. His group works very hard to end mass incarceration, and it's a social justice group that works hard on really reforming societal expectations and decreasing stigma of folks who have formerly been incarcerated. Excellent group. So I'm seeing some notes in the chat, seeing a reminder to not try to look like a spokesperson for a group. Yeah, try to reach out as much as possible, include many people within the group, absolutely. And there's another note of, this is a reminder of how often we rush to fix things for families without spending time to include them in the solution. Because think about yourselves for just one moment. You don't even have to share it if you don't want to, but I know everybody here has had a moment in the last few months where you said, well, if they just asked me, I could fix it, right? Whether that's at work or that's in your community, families are experts. They know more about their children than we do. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. When I think about, there was something recently with a bank that came up. I was like, oh, how do I not have the ear of someone to actually be able to fix this? I wish I wish someone would ask me. And that's what your families always want too. They really do have ideas. They talk amongst themselves about solutions that they don't know how to give you, to tell you that it would be something that can help them. So again, co-design can be helpful to even just access those ideas, which you don't have access to right now. Principles of co-design. So I'm just going down the left-hand column for a moment. It's purposeful, it's inclusive, it's designed to be equitable. And again, that participative is talking about like how involved the families are. It is based in respect. Because it is not a one and done like a survey or a focus group. It's, we have a meeting, we go and try something, come back, let's talk about how did it work, how did it not work, how do we improve it, goes back out again. It's iterative. It just goes through phases, right? And you come up with some really innovative solutions. And it's also highly adaptive. You know, what are we going, you have to always be thinking about how are we going to use this, how are we going to review it together, and then how we're going to adapt it again, because it is always thinking about things as able to be improved, which I think is hard sometimes for school mindsets. This is again that mindset piece of it's not just one and done. It's, you know, forever closed off. Let's be open to the idea of, hey, if that didn't work, we can fix it. Benefits of co-design. Cambria was mentioning some really interesting things earlier about just with family engagement that, you know, we know that how the students benefit. I also want to underline that when you feel more connected, when you feel more, staff feels more connected to their community and the work that they're doing, and when they feel like families are supporting them, when they feel like communities are supporting them, then they have higher job satisfaction, which research around that. Right? And then therefore the turnover will be lower. So it's worth the kind of investment of just inviting a few people into a meeting and then another meeting. It might feel like it's more work to do the very first time, but then once you've created a couple of pipelines of people, it's not a problem to ask, you know, could be thinking all the time, ask a parent. So some of the benefits, these solutions will be more effective. They're more sustainable. They're more ethical because they're more inclusive and equitable. You're going to have enhanced user satisfaction and ownership, and that being able to be more creative for all of you, making those deeper connections, like I was mentioning, greater job satisfaction for you all. And then, like I said in the other slide, it builds better relationships. And because you're working together and have learned to trust each other, it makes for partnerships instead of just interactions. Steps of co-design. Basically, you're going to this is always a question. It's like, okay, so how do I do this? You're going to very thoughtfully and intentionally create a team. We're going to talk in a minute just to do an example of how we would maybe go through these steps. But you create a team. You define some goals and objectives together. You engage in some really collaborative conversations. These meetings that you have are, you know, calling them a workshop because you aren't just presenting. You're having conversations, and you are being very careful and thoughtful about how you're eliciting, creating a safe space, how you're going to ask for input so that people feel safe and they won't be retaliated against, that they won't, that their ideas will be taken seriously and considered just like everyone else's ideas. Because again, until that imbalance of power is acknowledged and addressed, families are going to always feel like they have to be careful about what they can say and how they can say it. Then you're going to prototype things, do some user tests, whether that's, you know, you've created this product and you want to put it out to a few families. Great, use the families that are in the room to share it with a few other families to get feedback. And then you make some improvements. You keep iterating. You go through this process, not from the beginning, but you keep going through the process of making things better until you can implement it. And then come together again just to reflect on it, see how it's working, why isn't it working, or what's going great so you can use it for future projects, and then document it. So this was something I think I heard Dr. Presame say also. It's like, how do we communicate the outcomes with people? We need to We need to actually share with families, hey, we use your ideas. And once you've put it out there, when you announce a policy or a change or a product of some or practice of some sort, tell families, hey, we created this with families. We had family input on this because it will increase adoption rates of any work that you're doing. So again, one last, putting a bow on it, co-design is a method. It's a process. It's not just it's not an act, it's a process for bringing together people who are experts on the problem to join with people who are experts on the delivery system, bringing them together as equals. And both of those types of expertise, what you bring from having, you understand the system that you work in, and then the families bringing their lived experience, both of those need to be respected and valued. They're both neither one can create the solutions that they could when they work together. And remember that this is not the same thing as input or feedback. So let's explore co-design. 1, this is something for you to do just on a piece of paper in front of you. There's going to be 5 questions. So on a piece of paper in front of you, just name any policy, program, practice, project, product, anything you're working on right now when you're thinking about newcomer families. Like there's definitely something you're working on or something you're considering and you're thinking about creating. So just take a moment, write that down for yourself. Okay. Who would be involved in creating that solution? I want you to write that down too. If it was just you, just write down you. But who would be, as you're creating this, who are you thinking you would include? Let me take just a moment. Okay. Now, add some stakeholders to that list who are closest to the problem. Just look at the list again. There's probably someone else. If you think about some stakeholders who are closest to the problem, it might be PACs, it might be families. Maybe you have a hotel in your community that is housing a large number of newcomer families. How do you access them? Maybe they could be part of the conversation. Now look around that table that you just wrote up on that list. Imagine it's an actual table, everybody's sitting at it. Who's missing? Who's missing? Do we have people of different abilities and disabilities? Do we have many languages represented? Is there room? What else can we add to this table? There's room for them. Think about if you would have to do this during the day, during school day, are you leaving some folks out? Are you leaving out single parents who have to work during the day? Are you leaving out, is the location leaving anybody out? Is the format, the fact that they would have to come into your office or would have to be on a computer for Zoom, would that leave anyone out? Who else? And then here's my last one. Who else in the community is trying to create this solution? Who else is trying to solve this problem? Who else is interested in this problem? Because sometimes it's a business who's willing to give money because it's something you've heard that they're interested in. But who else? Is there a welcome to your town group? Is there the YMCA, the Boys and Girls Club, the rec department, the mayor's office? Is there a department? Who else is trying to solve this problem? Because they could be invited too. Let's add them. I'll give you one more minute on that, or moment. What a different list, right? What can you guys share with me? I'm interested to hear if there, again, you can use the chat or you can open your mic, but what did that process do for you? Is that different than the process you normally think of when you were thinking about the solution before? This is intentional, right? We're taking a moment to be intentional, plan how we would approach the problem in a different way. please feel free to share in there. Because the bottom line is, this is the question, and that mindset I was talking about is asking yourself, are the people who are closest to the problem equal decision makers in your solution? Are they? Can they be? So Cambria hinted toward the pacts and the role that they could take in your work. Now, cultural brokers is a bigger conversation. Overall, we've had other presentations specifically on that, but I want to link it here with co-design and with parent advisory councils for just a moment. So what is a cultural broker? This is someone who, this goes back centuries. It's people who, when, unfortunately, has a colonizing history, but when colonizers would come into spaces, who in the communities would talk to each other? Who was it that bridged the gaps? Who linked the two communities? Who mediated between the needs of one group and the needs of another? In our time, in our work, and in family engagement, these are the folks who live in our communities that we are trying to serve, and can broker. They understand your system, and they understand the needs of that community. Usually they're part of the group. They don't have to be part of the group, but often they're part of the cultural group. They may be a leader within that cultural group. So they're knowledgeable in both spaces. They have a deep understanding of the group's needs, the barriers they face, the potential solutions that could help, because they are part of those conversations of, if they would just ask me, I could fix it. And they do have relevant language and cultural context. That's the most important quality, I think, in terms of, maybe not the most important, but a very important set of qualifications for a cultural broker to be effective in your work, because you don't just want someone who says, yes, I speak Spanish, but I'm not connected to any groups of other people who have needs in the Newcomer community. You want to speak to people who are actually advocating in that space. Maybe it's religious leaders who have been serving that group. It could be any number of people. It just depends on the group that you're trying to connect. Why are they valuable? I wonder if there are people in the chat. Can you just let me know if you're working with any cultural brokers? That would be really useful as I'm talking about this, because cultural brokers establish trust and respect between the two groups. Because this person is almost like the scout that goes ahead and then comes back and says if that other group is trustworthy, right? This is what you can do with that group, but this is what you can share with them. This is what you can tell them, but don't do these other things, right? Your cultural broker is going to be providing information both to you and from, and with interpretation like that. Because they understand the community's culture, they can help you navigate the community. Their networks save you time. If you're connected to someone in the community who's really connected with the community, contacting that one person and saying, okay, who would I talk to if I needed to understand this information, or if I wanted to find this resource? That's an incredible value to you. They also do represent people who are closest to the problem, because they are part of that community. They are one of the people closest to the problem. They can help increase engagement, because when you explain a process or a policy to someone, a cultural broker, and they bring it back to the community, that means more people will trust that process, trust that policy, trust that practice, and then they're more likely to engage it, which ultimately improves your outcomes. Anybody have any thoughts on that? I saw some new screens open, so just check. Okay, where do we find cultural brokers? Advocates in the communities you serve. That's a big one. Advocates in the organizations serving the same groups you are. So if there's even people serving food to the newcomer families in your community, how do you connect with them and start sharing resources and start figuring out if there are solutions you can work on together? Could be, like I mentioned, leaders of religious or cultural education groups, the folks who actually teach Chinese culture or Portuguese culture, or any kind of groups that are going on in the community. And of course, your school's parent advisory councils, like Cambria mentioned. These folks are, as Cambria said, you might find newcomer families already in the packs, but the packs could help you with outreach to connect to the newcomers, to help them access those systems. I remember hearing at the very beginning, someone said that a lot of times newcomers don't know our systems. They don't understand how to navigate them. The packs are exactly designed to do that. That is what they are there to do, is to help families navigate these systems. So if there's something you want more families to know about of the work that you're doing, please share it with the packs. They are an excellent conduit to the community, two ways, to you and from you. So investing in your English Learner Parent Advisory Council means you'll find natural leaders in the community. And the newcomer families themselves can become your cultural brokers also. They can become more involved in the schools and be able to shortcut your understanding, give you a direct line to understand what's happening in those communities much faster and in more meaningful ways than perhaps you could have before. And a lot of times the PACs are the people that can be those, the trust broker in those relationships as they're being built. So last thing I was going to ask you to do, please, one quick activity, and then I'd love to discuss about it. But if you could think about 3 to 5 people based on those descriptions that I just gave you, 3 to 5 people who are or could become cultural brokers for your work. Who are, let's take just a moment, let's be intentional and think about who are some people that could be the leaders of your PACs, your LPAC, could be some religious leaders in your community. Think about articles you've read lately or stories you've heard. Who else could be cultural brokers you have not connected with? Maybe family liaisons for districts. Oh, definitely. Family liaisons are cultural brokers. Definitely. That was the whole other presentation we had on cultural brokers, was with family liaisons as cultural brokers. Definitely. So that's so great. There's someone sharing that there's a story that the liaisons had made calls to the same language families for a parent evening recently. And there was a much higher turnout for that than other groups, which is exactly it. Yes, family liaisons. If you are not a family liaison and you have family liaisons in your school district, yes, they are your gifts. It's called system-based cultural brokers. Absolutely. And who else? What are 3 to 5 groups that you want or need cultural brokers for? Like, what are some communities that it would be great for your work if you had cultural brokers to help connect you? And then just creatively, what are 3 groups, name 3 groups that you could reach out to, people or groups, who could help introduce you to potential cultural brokers in those communities? Because maybe you don't know a cultural broker, but you know a member of the community. Or maybe you know someone at work who you know is, one of those like Kevin Bacon things here, right? We're like second, third. How many degrees of Kevin Bacon are we from your cultural brokers? How do we get there? What could be the next step to reach out and meet them? And so in the chat or out loud, I'd love to hear how you think that collaborating with cultural brokers could help improve your work. And, the comment that was put into the chat is an excellent example of, asking people to actually help with the outreach can really improve. It's a great example of how it improves outcomes and engagement. Where you're trying to have people be part of your community and school community. How could co-design improve either of those topics? How does this information, how could it improve your work, whether it's co-design or collaborating with cultural brokers? Wow. I love that. Yep, more success stories like the one that was offered. I love that. Cambria suggesting if you have success stories of how it's been working for you, we'd love to hear it. So you can be doing that as we move forward. Oh, Chris, opened your mic, please.
Yeah, I think one group that could be a cultural broker would be staff and faculty members who are able to connect with the same language families. Our librarian speaks Portuguese, so we had our family event and asked her if she could just, we have district interpreters, but it was really nice to have a person on staff who already had connections with the kids. And now to meet the parents is just one more level of connection, but to build the home and school connection up. So I think like utilizing the people that you have in the community.
yeah, looking to your staff to see who's already parts of those communities. I think that's fantastic. I know I would feel overlooked if someone didn't ask me if I was on staff, and it's clear I was part of a community, and that, you know, I would love to be a bridge for. Anyone else? I'd love to hear another success story or suggestion for everybody else to share.
Hi, I want to chime in once again. I definitely second what Chris said, you know, in terms of like the family liaisons. I tend to see that a lot too. You know, you're communicating with folks that understand the language, and I'm gonna show up because there's gonna be someone that gets me, that looks like me. But aside from that, you know, when I was when to impose your question, like 3 to 5 people, especially when we're helping our families forget how. What am I trying to say here? Sometimes they don't know the power of their voice, you know, and so sometimes you need a group of folks to help with that voice to be heard. So let's say if there's a situation at a school with their pertaining to their child, something very minimal, you know, we're in touch with school counselors. You know, we're in touch with school leaders. We hold meetings with you know, parent liaisons, that do the translation, the interpreting, so that way families understand exactly the meaning of the meeting, and are helping understand families that their voices are extremely important. But it takes everyone to be on the same page. And again, to let the family know, like, this is about you. Like, we want to help you out. So I wanted to, you know, share that with you all.
Thank you. Yeah, centering on family voice is everything, right? That's the power. And I think I'd like to build on what you're saying about how families forget that their voice is important. A lot of families, especially when we go into communities where, at least this is what we've seen historically, is especially families who their students are English learners. We find that a lot of families don't understand the school system in the same way as people who maybe were brought up in feeling very privileged and white and more socioeconomic resources, who feel like I can go into the school and ask for anything I want anytime I want. And a lot of families don't know what they can ask for and what is their right and what's the norm, and that it's okay. And, you know, on top of that is all the layers of, you know, racism and the, you know, knowing what you, there's all sorts of reasons people don't, but we know that in this community specifically, that's a space where there's more hesitancy, which again, LPACs are designed to help with. It's supposed to be a bridge between instead of having to go directly to the school administration, you can go to your LPAC, which is other families who can then gather that information and bring it to the administration, right? So that's another one reason to support and publicize your LPAC among your families that you're working with, because you want them to know there is that safe landing. Thank you. Well, that is my piece for today. Thank you so much for letting me talk about co-design. I do love it. There you go.
I just wanted
Thank
to
you, Regina.
piggyback off of something that Sabrina said. Really, no, that's okay. You can leave us like this for the moment. I just wanted to piggyback off what Sabrina just said, because research actually tells us exactly what you just said, that if families know that their voice is needed and respected and desired, then they will engage. And so, you know, it's on us to make sure that folks feel welcome to be part of the conversation and really valued there. So for a lot of folks, that's the one thing keeping them from engagement, is just not realizing that what they're going to say is going to be valued. So I'm glad you brought that up. All right, before oh, okay, go ahead. So I was going to say we are kind of starting a process now that's going to go from this session into the next session. And so everyone should have in their private messages from me your own Jamboard. That's not the one we're going to use right now, but I just want you all to know that there's a space that we've created for each of you where you can privately keep your thoughts and, you know, do some planning on your own. Right now, we're going to use a shared Jamboard where everyone is going to contribute and we'll be able to see each other's answers. So I just want to be clear that these are two different things. So I'm going to drop the shared Jamboard in the everybody chat, and then you still have your own private one. And if you don't, then let me know. So we're going to use this Jamboard to spend a few minutes reflecting, and I will actually share my screen so that we can all see how to use this. Okay. Are folks seeing my shared Jamboard? I can't see you, so somebody just tell me with your voice.
Open now.
Yes,
It's
we
now
can
open.
see.
Yes.
Okay, super. Okay, so all of your Jamboards look like this too. So just try to keep them separate. If you don't, that's no big deal. But anyway, so everybody's going to have a Jamboard that has this welcome page with the Federation symbol on it. And it tells us here that we're going to be using the Jamboard to think about accessing PACs for newcomer family support. And we're going to be doing some action planning, which includes visioning, and then an analysis of our current strengths, needs, opportunities, and threats, and then ultimately an action plan. Obviously, in the next like 40 minutes, we can't do all of that, but I want to introduce the whole thing to you and at least get our shared thoughts about our current relationships with our PACs. So I'm going to walk through the whole thing and then we'll go back and share together. So on page 1, you'll see that we're going to do this together. You're going to describe your existing partnerships with the parent leaders in your school districts. So some of you may not have a CPAC right now. I know a lot of districts are on waivers. You may not have an LPAC because you haven't reached that threshold for needing one yet. So we use the term parent leaders, which could stand for any of those, either PACs or just individual leaders. What you're going to do in order to contribute is you can either take a sticky note that Megan's already created for you. You can double click on it, and then you can write something brilliant here. And then when you enter, where'd my sticky note go? Well, I guess I'm misleading you. We'll try that
It's there.
again.
You wrote Brian. Yes, it's there. You wrote brilliant.
Do you see it? Because I don't see it on my page.
Yes,
All
I see
right.
it.
Okay,
I
cool.
don't know why it disappeared on yours, but I can see it on mine.
That's so weird. It's completely gone. Okay. Technology. So you'll take a sticky and then you're just going to describe your existing partnerships. So this might be that you don't have any existing partnerships, that you have intentions to develop some, or that you are working clearly and closely with individual people or actual groups. So that's going to be step 1, and we'll all do that together. And then I want to talk about it. And then we will revisit the rest of the process that we're going to go through together over this session and the following session. Please ask me any questions. I feel like I got so distracted by the fact that my little yellow note left that I lost my train of thought. Okay, I see people filling it in, so let's give this a few minutes. Feel free to turn off your camera and type, or do whatever you need to do to get the thoughts going.
Also, your words are all anonymous. There's nothing tracking them on the Jamboard. It doesn't like.
Can you say that again, Megan? You kind of broke up.
Oh, sorry. That I just wanted to let people know that the notes don't have their names attached, so it's anonymous when you add a note to the Jamboard.
Okay, is everybody seeing my screen again?
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Megan. All right, so I see we have quite a range of powerful, active partnerships, collaboration. I think maybe Megan is the one who's kind of made a spectrum out of these for me, which I appreciate. In the middle, we have kind of emerging in progress, a work in progress. And then we also have some folks that saying that their work is missing or stalled in terms of partnerships with parent leaders. And I see that some are trying to get a family ambassador program going. So I'm curious if first we could hear from some folks who have things on the very positive side of this, who indicate that your partnerships with parent leaders in your district are powerful or active. And if you could give us some examples or give a little detail to what you're experiencing. It's okay to brag. All right. What about folks in the middle? Do you have, I have words like emerging, in progress, in process. Can we hear some details about what that looks like? I know y'all are still awake because you're typing on the Jamboard. All right, I won't press too much. I'll ask the folks who have challenging situations if anyone's willing to speak up.
I'll share.
Thanks,
I
Chris.
wrote
Chris, can you tell us where you're from? I'm not sure I know what district you're in.
Watertown.
Excellent.
I wrote the comment about the Family Ambassador Program. We just have had so many newcomers who have enrolled this year, and we are, it's an LPAC. We want to get an LPAC up and running, but we are inviting parents in, trying to find people who would be willing to have a step above that. We would like for them to reach out to new families who have arrived so they can instantly connect with someone in the same language and get information about the school, how to find your child's grades and assignments on Google Classroom and PowerSchool, what to do when you need to report an absence, things like that. And so we have had a parent event, and we have another one coming up in a couple of weeks. And we're starting to, the next event will be to gather information from the families about what would have helped them when they arrived so we can plan our programming. So I'm listening to, at first, when you talked about what was the term for it? The
Co-design.
Not co-planning, co-design. When you talked
Yep.
about co-design, I listened, I thought, oh, we should be doing more of that. But then I guess we're planning for the co-design. We have prepared our event with things in mind, like the time of day. We've tried to be mindful about that, which was very helpful. Time of day, snacks, childcare, and interpretation are the big things that we wanted to have available. And so then when the parents come for the next one, then we'll bring them into co-design, and we'll talk about what would have been helpful when they arrived so that we can plan out the topics. So I actually would have put ours in the middle, I think, but there's a long way to go. We are just getting started. So yeah, it's fine that it's on the just starting outside.
I want to hear when you start entering into that kind of co-design process. I'd love to hear back from you, so that because we want to be able to share the successes, the things that we're hearing from Lawrence, that we've heard, from Brockton. Those are things we want to help other districts hear about, because sometimes folks just don't know what step one is, or don't know what the positive end could be, what the results could be. So please keep us informed as things develop. And I'll say, when you said that you wanted to, bring families in and ask them what would have helped them, that is that's a piece of co-design, right? I mean, you're not co-designing the experience that they had, but you're inviting them to co-design the experience of the future families that are showing up. And I'd encourage you to think of it that way, because just having that attitude that we're not just getting feedback on what happened with them.
Mhm.
We're having them plan with us what's going to happen in the future, and
Yeah.
just shifting your mindset a little bit, I think really will make families feel like they're included in a development process, which can be a beautiful thing.
Great. Yeah, thank you.
Sabrina, did you come on camera to chat?
No, my camera actually fell, so I was fixing the camera. All this time, I'm like, "Where's my face?" So I was pointing up. But now that I am on the spot, when I think of the co-design piece, I mean, Lawrence is so unique, and I have to say I'm not part of that design process, because when I came on board, it was something that was already put into place, which is beautiful to see it play out. But one of the things that kind of came to mind that I would like to share is, we're centralized when it comes to enrollment. We're centralized, and we have a family resource center where we're compiled with so many resources in one building. With that, one of the things that came to mind is for our newcomers, the moment they come in, when they go into the school, they're so overwhelmed to making sure that their child has a good experience academically, socially, etc. So maybe providing information right from the get, this just came to mind, to families like, hey, when you get home, when you get to school and you bring your child to school on the first day of school, you know, mention, that you would want to become part of the LPAC team. Instead of learning later on, let's be proactive and maybe perhaps, letting them know at the end of the registration process when they're getting ready and bringing their child to school and they're at ease. Hey, now you can do X, Y, and Z. Let me tell you a little bit about what the LPAC is, instead of waiting for them to hear about it when their child is already attending school.
I love that idea. That's great. Let me know when you do it.
For sure. Planning process.
All right, so I'd like everybody to shift to using your own personal Jamboard now. So if you didn't get one in a direct message, just send me a message and I will send it again. Sometimes when you leave the Zoom and come back again, you lose the old messages. So I'm happy to send it to you again. It will look exactly like the one that we were sharing, but this one is yours. We will, I'm saying we, Anne will keep up with it for you. She'll email the link to you, make sure that your name's on it and all those sort of things so that you can carry it over from this session to the next. And when you are in that Jamboard, we're going to shift from the page we just filled out where we described our current relationships with our family leaders. And I would like you to think to the future about what those family relationships and PAC relationships are going to look like a year from now, let's say in 2025. And so we're creating aspirations for ourselves and what we want our relationships with our PACs to be. And we want to continue to think about this in terms of the newcomer landscape, and thinking about like the sky's the limit, not just like the kind of basic, you might want to be a little bit better. Like really think about co-creation, cultural brokering, real partnerships, and welcoming newcomer families. And so I'd like you to do that in your own personal Jamboard and send me a message if you do not have that. We're going to spend a few minutes doing that, and that'll kind of set the stage for our next steps. You give me a thumbs up if you think you're ready to move to the next step. Thanks, Sabrina. All right, I'm getting a couple of messages from folks who have to step away for school-related things, which I totally understand since we're all school-based folks. So I actually think I want to, Megan, if you don't mind, I think I want to go to our like concluding slide so that we can have that discussion, and then you and I can possibly stay on while people work on their action planning. But I want a chance to do a little community reflection before people have to go for different school-based meetings and things like that. So we're skipping around a little bit. I hope that nobody minds. So before others have to leave, and I know Chris just had to jump off and someone else did too, I wanted us to just think for a moment as a group about what you might take away from the conversation, what might have surprised you or is new to you about the tools that we're utilizing, and to reflect on our relationships with our parent communities. So I'll just start with the first one. And what will you be taking away from this conversation? What's something that maybe you're going to share with a colleague? Maybe something you're going to do.
Good question. Do you need this part to be recorded?
Oh no, actually, let's stop the recording.
Maybe that would encourage people to chat.
No, I appreciate that. That's a good idea.